Welcome to Truth Behind History, where we explore the fascinating stories, events, and civilizations that have shaped the world. Today, we're diving into the rich and complex history of India, a land that has been home to some of the world's oldest civilizations, greatest empires, and most influential cultural and intellectual achievements. India's history isn't just about dates and rulers, it's a story of innovation, resilience, and global influence. From the bustling streets of ancient cities to the towering monuments of empires, every corner of India has a story to tell. So, let's begin our journey through time, starting with India's earliest civilizations and tracing its path through the ages. India is often called a cradle of civilization, and for good reason. It was home to one of the earliest advanced societies, the Indus Valley Civilization. Long before the pyramids of Egypt or the Great Walls of China, cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-daro were thriving centers of urban life. This civilization, along with the many that followed, played a crucial role in shaping global history. But India isn't just ancient ruins and forgotten kingdoms. It is a land of immense diversity, culturally, linguistically, and religiously. It has been a melting pot of ideas and traditions for thousands of years. Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism all originated here. Sanskrit epics, intricate architecture, and classical music are just a fraction of the artistic and literary wealth India has produced. And let's not forget its global impact. Indian scholars developed the concept of zero and made groundbreaking contributions to science, medicine, and philosophy. The country has been a major hub in global trade for centuries, connecting cultures and economies across Asia, the Middle East, and beyond. Now, let's go back to where it all began, with one of the world's first great civilizations, the Indus Valley Civilization. Long before the rise of Greece or Rome, the Indus Valley Civilization flourished along the banks of the Indus River. This civilization, which stretched across what is now Pakistan and northwestern India, was one of the earliest examples of advanced urban planning in human history. Now, when you think of ancient cities, you might imagine chaotic streets and simple mud brick houses. But the cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro were anything but primitive. These cities had carefully planned streets laid out in a precise grid pattern, similar to modern city planning. Homes had their own wells and drainage systems, something that even many cities in medieval Europe lacked thousands of years later. The people of the Indus Valley knew the importance of sanitation, and they designed their cities with efficiency in mind. Their population sizes were also impressive. Estimates suggest that major urban centers housed between 30 to 60,000 people, making them some of the largest cities in the world at that time. But what's even more fascinating is that there is no clear evidence of massive palaces, ruling dynasties, or large-scale military campaigns. This has led many historians to wonder, was this an unusually peaceful civilization? Did they have a decentralized government? Or was power distributed in a way that we just don't fully understand yet? And then, there's their trade networks. The Indus Valley Civilization wasn't isolated. Artifacts from their cities have been found as far away as Mesopotamia, indicating a vast trade network that stretched across regions. They traded goods like cotton, beads, pottery, and possibly even spices, making them a key player in early global commerce. But around 1700 BCE, something happened. The civilization declined, and the great cities were abandoned. Was it due to climate change, a shift in the course of the Indus River, or perhaps an invasion from outside forces? The truth is, we don't know for sure. But what we do know is that India's history didn't stop there. A new era was beginning, the Vedic Period. As the Indus Valley Civilization faded, a new chapter in India's history began, the Vedic Period. This era is named after the Vedas, a collection of sacred texts that form the foundation of Hindu philosophy, spirituality, and social structure. These texts weren't just religious scriptures, they were also filled with hymns, chants, rituals, and even philosophical discussions about the nature of existence and the universe. One of the defining features of the Vedic period was its societal structure. This was the time when the Varna system began to take shape. Society became divided into four broad groups: Brahmins, who were priests and scholars; Kshatriyas, who were warriors and rulers; Vaishyas, who were traders and merchants; and Shudras, who were laborers and servants. This structure would later evolve into the caste system, which remained a significant part of Indian society for centuries. But this period wasn't just about religion and social order. There was also a major shift in the economy. Earlier societies had relied heavily on pastoralism, meaning they depended on livestock for survival. But during the Vedic period, agriculture became the dominant way of life. People began cultivating land, growing crops, and settling in larger, more permanent villages. This shift led to an increase in population and the development of more complex societies, setting the stage for the rise of India's first great empires. And with the rise of larger political structures, powerful rulers began to emerge. The foundations of kingdoms were being laid, paving the way for one of India's most influential dynasties, the Maurya Empire. The Maurya Empire was India's first true empire, uniting most of the Indian subcontinent under one rule. It was founded by Chandragupta Maurya, a brilliant and ambitious leader who seized power and expanded his empire through both military conquest and strategic diplomacy. Before this, India was a patchwork of small kingdoms and city-states, each ruled independently. But under Chandragupta, much of northern and central India was brought under a single, centralized administration. Now, ruling such a vast and diverse territory wasn't easy, but the Maurya Empire had something that many others lacked: an advanced and well-organized government. Much of the credit for this goes to Chanakya, Chandragupta's advisor and the author of the Arthashastra, an ancient political and economic treatise. Think of it as a handbook on statecraft, diplomacy, and governance, covering everything from taxation to military strategy. But the Maurya Empire is perhaps best remembered for the reign of one of India's most remarkable rulers, Emperor Ashoka. Initially, Ashoka followed in his grandfather's footsteps, expanding the empire through warfare. But everything changed after the Kalinga War. This battle was so brutal and devastating that it left Ashoka horrified by the immense suffering he had caused. In a dramatic transformation, he renounced violence and adopted Buddhism, dedicating the rest of his reign to spreading peace and ethical governance. Ashoka didn't just keep his beliefs to himself, he wanted the world to hear them. He had his edicts carved onto pillars and rocks across the empire, promoting principles like religious tolerance, compassion, and moral duty. These inscriptions remain some of the oldest surviving records of Indian history. Under Ashoka, Buddhism spread far beyond India, reaching Central Asia, China, and Southeast Asia. His influence was so profound that many consider him one of the greatest rulers in history. But after his death, the Maurya Empire began to decline, and India once again fragmented into smaller kingdoms. However, this was not the end of India's golden age. In fact, an even more prosperous and culturally rich period was about to begin with the rise of the Gupta Empire. If the Maurya Empire was about political unification, the Gupta Empire was about cultural and intellectual flourishing. This period is often called the Golden Age of India, and for good reason. The Guptas oversaw an era of prosperity, scientific advancements, artistic achievements, and literary masterpieces that would shape the world for centuries to come. One of the biggest contributions of the Gupta Empire was in mathematics. Ever wonder where the concept of zero comes from? Yep, it was developed in India during this time. The decimal system, algebra, and trigonometry also saw major advancements, with scholars like Aryabhata making significant discoveries about planetary motion and even calculating the value of pi. Without these developments, modern mathematics would look very different. Science and astronomy weren't the only fields thriving, literature and the arts were at their peak. Sanskrit became the dominant literary language, with poets and playwrights like Kalidasa, often referred to as the Shakespeare of India, producing some of the most celebrated works in Indian literature. His plays, such as Shakuntala, are still performed today. Meanwhile, Ajanta cave paintings, with their vibrant colors and intricate details, showcase the artistic genius of the time, depicting scenes from daily life, religion, and mythology. Philosophy and religious thought also flourished. Hinduism continued to evolve, with texts like the Puranas expanding on mythological stories, while Buddhist and Jain traditions remained influential across the region. However, like all golden ages, this one, too, came to an end. The empire eventually weakened due to internal conflicts and invasions from Central Asian nomadic groups. But even as the Gupta Empire declined, the cultural and intellectual achievements of this period left a lasting impact, not just on India, but on the world. With the fall of the Guptas, India saw the rise of powerful southern kingdoms, such as the Chola and Vijayanagara empires, which played a crucial role in shaping trade, art, and maritime influence. While much of North India saw shifting political landscapes, the southern kingdoms of the Chola and Vijayanagara empires were thriving, leaving behind a legacy of architectural brilliance, maritime power, and cultural expansion that reached far beyond the Indian subcontinent. The Chola Empire, which rose to prominence around the 9th century, wasn't just known for ruling vast lands, it was also a major naval power. The Cholas expanded their influence across Southeast Asia, establishing trade networks with kingdoms in Indonesia, Thailand, and even China. They didn't just send ships loaded with goods, they also exported Indian art, religious traditions, and architecture, influencing the cultural landscapes of far-off lands. Speaking of architecture, the Cholas were master builders, responsible for constructing some of the grandest temples in India, like the Brihadeshwara Temple, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. These temples weren't just places of worship, they were economic and social hubs, hosting festivals, housing schools, and serving as centers of artistic and literary activity. Centuries later, another powerful southern kingdom emerged, the Vijayanagara Empire. This empire, founded in the 14th century, stood as a last great Hindu stronghold against invading forces. Its capital, Hampi, was once a bustling metropolis filled with ornate palaces, intricate temples, and sprawling markets. Travelers from Persia and Europe who visited the city described it as one of the richest and most beautiful cities in the world. But what made these southern kingdoms so remarkable was their ability to connect India to the wider world. With strong maritime trade, they established deep ties with the Middle East, China, and Africa, making India a crucial player in the global economy. However, political conflicts and invasions eventually led to their downfall, marking the end of an era of regional power. But India's story didn't stop there. Another cultural transformation was on the horizon with the rise of the Delhi Sultanate and the Mughal Empire, which brought new influences in architecture, governance, and trade. As India moved into the medieval period, the Delhi Sultanate and later the Mughal Empire brought new waves of influence, blending Persian, Central Asian, and Indian cultures into something entirely unique. This era saw the rise of monumental architecture, administrative reforms, and a fusion of artistic traditions that continue to define India today. One of the most visible legacies of this period is architecture. Some of India's most iconic monuments, like the Taj Mahal and Qutub Minar, emerged during this time, blending Persian, Indian, and Islamic styles into breathtaking structures. Intricate domes, minarets, and geometric designs became defining features of Indian architecture. These were not just buildings, they were symbols of power, devotion, and artistic mastery. But it wasn't just about architecture, culture itself was evolving. The arrival of Persian influences led to a fusion of Indian and Islamic traditions, especially in language, music, and cuisine. Urdu, a language that blends Persian, Arabic, and Sanskrit, developed during this time and remains widely spoken today. Indian classical music also absorbed Persian elements, creating new styles and instruments that would shape the future of Indian musical traditions. The Mughals, in particular, transformed India's administration. Under Akbar the Great, policies of religious tolerance were introduced, allowing Hindus and Muslims to coexist more peacefully. Akbar also reformed the tax system, making it fairer for farmers and merchants, which helped stabilize the economy. Trade flourished under the Mughals, making India one of the wealthiest nations in the world. Luxury goods like spices, textiles, and gemstones were in high demand across Europe and Asia, fueling a booming economy. The grandeur of cities like Delhi, Agra, and Lahore attracted merchants, scholars, and artists from all over the world. However, like all great empires, the Mughal dynasty eventually declined due to internal conflicts and external invasions. As the empire weakened, another force was waiting to take control, the British Empire. What began as a trade relationship soon turned into full-scale colonization, leading to one of the most turbulent periods in India's history. With the decline of the Mughal Empire, the British slowly tightened their grip on India, transforming it from a major economic powerhouse into a colony under their rule. What started as a trade partnership through the British East India Company turned into full-scale political and economic control by the British Crown. One of the most devastating aspects of British rule was economic exploitation. Before colonization, India had been a center of global trade, famous for its textiles, spices, and wealth. But under British policies, Indian industries were systematically dismantled. Local businesses were crushed to make way for British imports, and millions of artisans, particularly in the textile industry, lost their livelihoods. India became a source of raw materials for Britain's industrial revolution, while its own economy suffered massive deindustrialization. The British also imposed forced cash crop cultivation, which meant that instead of growing food, farmers were required to grow crops like cotton and indigo for British industries. This led to famines, with millions of Indians dying from starvation while grain was being exported to Britain. One of the worst of these was the Bengal famine of 1943, in which millions perished due to food shortages worsened by British policies. But the British did bring some infrastructure development. Railways, telegraphs, and administrative systems were introduced, connecting different parts of India. However, these were designed primarily to serve British economic interests, moving goods efficiently, rather than improving life for Indians. Despite oppression, resistance grew over time. Nationalist movements emerged, demanding self-rule. The Indian National Congress, founded in 1885, became a platform for political activism, while leaders like Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, and Subhas Chandra Bose led mass protests and civil disobedience campaigns. Gandhi's philosophy of non-violent resistance, or satyagraha, inspired millions to stand against British rule. After decades of struggle, India finally gained independence in 1947, but not without significant consequences. The next chapter of India's history would be marked by one of the most tragic and violent events of the 20th century, the Partition of India. After nearly 2 centuries of British rule, India's fight for independence finally succeeded. On August 15, 1947, India officially became a free nation. But independence came at a heavy price: the Partition of India, which divided the country into 2 separate nations, India and Pakistan. The partition was one of the largest forced migrations in human history. Almost overnight, millions of people were uprooted from their homes. Hindus and Sikhs in newly formed Pakistan fled to India, while Muslims in India moved to Pakistan. The mass migration led to widespread violence, riots, and communal clashes, leaving an estimated 1 to 2 million people dead. Trains filled with refugees arrived at their destinations only to be discovered packed with bodies. Entire villages were burned to the ground, and families were torn apart in the chaos. The division wasn't just about borders, it left deep scars on the social and political fabric of the region. The relationship between India and Pakistan remained tense, leading to multiple wars and ongoing conflicts over disputed territories like Kashmir. Despite the violence and turmoil, India moved forward. In 1950, the country adopted a new democratic constitution, making it a sovereign republic. India's leaders, including Jawaharlal Nehru, the country's first prime minister, envisioned a nation built on democracy, secularism, and economic development. While independence marked a new beginning, India's challenges were far from over. The country had to rebuild its economy, strengthen its institutions, and unite a deeply divided population. But even through the struggles, India's rich cultural and intellectual legacy remained strong. As we move into the modern era, let's take a step back and explore India's contributions to world heritage, from philosophy and religion to art, science, and mathematics. India's contributions to global civilization go far beyond politics and empire building. It has been a cradle of innovation in philosophy, science, literature, music, and art, influencing cultures across the world for thousands of years. Let's start with religion and philosophy. India is the birthplace of Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism, and concepts like karma, dharma, and moksha have shaped spiritual traditions around the world. Buddhism, in particular, spread from India into China, Japan, Tibet, and Southeast Asia, influencing millions. Even Western philosophical movements have drawn inspiration from Indian thought, with scholars like Schopenhauer and Emerson admiring Indian scriptures. In literature, India produced some of the oldest and most complex texts in human history. The Mahabharata and Ramayana aren't just epic poems, they're vast narratives that explore morality, duty, and the struggles of human life. The Mahabharata alone is over 100,000 verses long, making it the longest poem ever written. Later, poets like Kalidasa and thinkers like Chanakya continued India's rich literary tradition. Science and mathematics saw groundbreaking contributions. The concept of zero, which forms the foundation of modern mathematics, was developed in India. The decimal system, early algebra, and trigonometry all have roots in Indian scholarship. Astronomers like Aryabhata calculated planetary orbits and even estimated the Earth's circumference over 1,000 years before the Europeans did. Architecture flourished under various dynasties. The intricate carvings of Ajanta and Ellora, the majestic Brihadeshwara temple, and of course, the Taj Mahal showcase the incredible engineering and artistic talent of India. These structures weren't just places of worship or power, they were symbols of India's vast cultural depth. And let's not forget music and dance. Indian classical music, with traditions like Hindustani and Carnatic music, has influenced genres worldwide. Instruments like the sitar and tabla have made their way into global music, with even Western rock bands like the Beatles incorporating Indian sounds into their work. India's culture is a vast, interconnected web of art, philosophy, music, science, and literature, and its influence has spread far beyond its borders. This brings us to India's global impact. India's influence on the world isn't just ancient, it continues to shape modern society in ways both visible and subtle. Let's start with trade and commerce. India was once known as the jewel of the East, famous for its spices, textiles, and precious gems. For centuries, traders from Rome, the Middle East, and China sought after India's goods, fueling global commerce. Even today, India remains a major player in international markets, particularly in technology, pharmaceuticals, and textiles. Then there's language and education. Many modern languages, including English, have borrowed heavily from Sanskrit and Hindi. Words like jungle, guru, and bungalow all have Indian origins. And when it comes to education, India's ancient universities like Nalanda and Takshashila were some of the world's earliest centers of higher learning, attracting scholars from China, Persia, and Greece. India's diaspora has also played a major role in shaping the world. Millions of Indians have migrated to countries across the globe, bringing their culture, cuisine, and traditions with them. From Bollywood films gaining international audiences to Indian cuisine being one of the most beloved in the world, India's cultural presence is everywhere. And of course, modern India continues to make its mark. India is a global leader in technology, space exploration, and medicine, with breakthroughs in fields like artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and renewable energy. The Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO, has made significant advancements, launching missions to the Moon and Mars with record-breaking efficiency. India's global impact is undeniable. It has influenced everything from philosophy and education to science, trade, and technology. Even as the world modernizes, India's historical and cultural roots continue to shape the present and the future. India's history is one of resilience, creativity, and profound influence. From the Indus Valley Civilization to the Gupta and Maurya Empires, from the Delhi Sultanate to British rule, and finally to independence, India has adapted, endured, and thrived through every challenge. Today, it stands as a rising global power, blending its ancient traditions with modern innovation. Its impact is everywhere, from the food we eat to the numbers we use, from music and movies to cutting-edge scientific advancements. If you enjoyed this deep dive into India's history, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to Truth Behind History for more fascinating historical content. Let me know in the comments what aspect of India's history interests you the most. And if you're a fan of history, check out my other videos, you're sure to find something you'll love. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.